back to Recipe to Revenue. I'm your host, Leah Messina, and I am here today with Christina Glentis, and she is the co-founder of a company called Foddies Foods. Christina has a super interesting story that she's going to share with us today, but she hails from Australia and runs her company across the globe. So I'm excited to dive into this, Christina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thanks. So let's kind of get first a lay of the land. Tell us just what your company is, what you sell, what your product is.
So Foddies Foods, we started the company in 2015, so about 11 years ago now. Obviously in Australia, what our main focus was creating food for people who have allergies, intolerances, and gut sensitivities. So I myself have fructose malabsorption and lactose intolerance. And I started the company with my now husband, then partner at the time, and he sort of just has generalized IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And there was really nowhere, it started when we were dating, there was really nowhere to go out to eat where we could sort of have a meal and not have to worry about, any of the unfortunate, digestive issues that come after eating. And so, my husband had experience creating businesses before, and I come from a very culinary not advanced, but a very culinary family where we love to cook. We've always, host big parties, so cooking's always kind of been in my DNA. And just from going out and having no options, we thought we can probably make something. I think there's a need for this. We can't be the only people that are experiencing these problems, not having any options, and the options that were out there actually tasting good and being enjoyable. And so that's really how our business started. That's really how the idea spawned, just out of a personal necessity that we just, were finding in our day-to-day life. And so we started with some cafes, making food. My biggest passion is making food that is allergy friendly but tastes normal, in quotation marks. People can't tell that it doesn't have, X, Y, or Z ingredient in it. And so that's really how we started, just by creating, having cafes and restaurants. And then from there, we progressed into CPG products. We had people, we would make something and they're like, can I buy the sauce that was in that dish? And we were like, yeah, why not? So we started bottling the sauces and selling them in the cafe, and it just kind of really grew quite organically from that.
Yeah. Well, I love that you go out on a date and you guys are trying to consider where to eat, and that turns into starting a restaurant together.
I know. Crazy.
Yeah. So you start to see the need from people and the interest of, okay, I want to bring that home with me. How long did you have your restaurants for before you started doing the CPG side?
Yeah, honestly, I think it was within like 6 months. It was a pretty quick uptick. We had people from immediately like, this was really tasty. I, want to take this home and recreate it, or I want to use it in a different dish that I make. So it happened pretty quickly. It wasn't something that we were expecting, to be honest. And so we quickly, were, preparing for the cafe, and then, after hours, batch creating and bottling and doing all of that so that we can hand applying all of the stickers, on the sauces, and, just really just doing what we could for the community. If they wanted it, we were going to give it. We were going to sell it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great testament to obviously the quality and taste of your product, and that it was helping people that were having these, sensitivities as well. And then you end up having multiple cafes. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we ended up with 3 cafes, and then unfortunately COVID hit, and where we were in Melbourne in Australia had the longest lockdown in the world, I believe. And so we that's when we really kind of pivoted and started focusing a lot more on our CPG products. So our CPG range grew to have, we had sauces, we had baking mixes, we had spice mixes, we had frozen meals, frozen desserts, frozen dumplings. So it really had expanded. And so that's when we really sort of started to grow and really wanted to get our product, because people couldn't physically come in anymore. So we wanted to get it out into the retail space. And so that's really what kind of pushed us to grow into that new market and really kind of become more of a CPG type company.
Yeah. So were you at that point relying mostly on your own like e-commerce website, or were you doing delivery of like frozen meals?
Yeah, so our frozen meals and all of those products we were selling through our own cafes, through our retail space. We had like a little freezer set up, and we had like a little shop where people could, purchase after their meal before, or just come in and purchase. And then we also had a D2C. We had our own delivery. We pivoted during COVID and did a fresh meal delivery service as well. And so people could come to our website, they could shop our CPG and purchase our fresh meals. But then we also started to get them into, we initially began in sort of the smaller, boutique grocery stores so that people could go to their local, specialty food store and purchase our product there. So we started doing that as well.
Yeah. So just really, I can't imagine how busy you guys must have been in that time period of creating all those different products. It's a lot of different SKUs to run.
Those years are a blur. It's just
Yeah.
it was just work.
Yeah.
Because what was my life? Just work. I don't even remember.
Yeah. What do you think were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in the early days of getting your CPG products launched?
I mean, honestly, we had to get out, Australia, this is again what we'll talk about, I think, later on, but like Australia functions a little differently in that, there's not as many options. We are a smaller country and we do have a few limited resources. So we had to get our own factory and to manufacture ourselves, especially because we had the allergy element. We needed to make sure that we had a gluten-free facility, which is challenging, I think, in the best of times. But, I think particularly relevant to Australia, it was a little bit more complicated to find, a co-packer that could deal with smaller quantity runs that we were currently needing. So we had to set up our own factory. So, that in itself is a challenge, just making sure, that you have all the correct equipment, and then we had to get it obviously HACCP certified to make sure that we were, compliant with the food safety laws, and that in itself. And then, obviously any company that manufactures themselves understands then you have to find the right stuff. Which is another whole headache in itself, the scheduling and supplier relationships and labeling and packaging materials, and just, it's almost what wasn't a challenge, to be honest with you. And I think that was really just having a supportive community. Yeah, we were great and grateful to have an amazing community that supports us and really, allowed us and stuck by us when we made little mistakes at the beginning, and just continued to champion us. So I think that was, a bit of a twist on your question, but that was the least challenging, was kind of our customer base, which is is great.
Well, that's a good one to kind of have nailed down, so you can worry about all the operational things. But exactly. Starting your own manufacturing facility, that's definitely no easy feat. Even regardless of like the actual setting up process of it and hiring staff. Is that something that you guys self-funded, or did you go to the bank and get a loan for it?
We bootstrapped everything from the get-go. So we really did it all ourselves. Where there was a will, where there's a will, there's a way, so to speak, and we just made it happen. I don't even, we did it.
We did it. You did it. Yeah. Awesome perseverance. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're growing this brand. You have all of these different SKUs. You're getting popularity. You're getting into grocery stores in Australia. Then tell us what happens next.
COVID hits.
Okay.
COVID hits, which, that's a global phenomenon. That's not anything too crazy. But COVID was really a turning point for us in our business, in that we stopped our cafes and our hospitality side to the business. And I think that was actually a blessing in disguise for us. At the time it was like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? But I think, looking back, that was really something that, as I said, was a blessing for us, because it allowed us to really kind of just have a break, firstly, from, working like so much. We were able to kind of take a weekend off, which was like something we hadn't done for years.
Hadn't done, right?
And so, exactly. And so being able to have that break allowed us to kind of get a sort of different perspective, often. And when you run a business, and I think any kind of business, you get so caught up sometimes in the business rather than working on the business. And this was really a great moment for us, where it allowed us to kind of, take a step back and figure out, what we should do next and what our next strategic move should be. And we decided that, we'd always wanted to expand and to come to the United States. It's a numbers game, especially when you're in a niche, category like we are, especially the FODMAP community, which is what we primarily focus on. It's sort of a niche in a sense. So this was really our moment where we decided it's now or never. It's time to expand. We don't have the hospitality side of it. Let's just, bite the bullet and do it. And so I think it was like we decided, and I think 4 months later, my husband actually came over here first to set up the company. I stayed back to hire staff, to make sure our factory was still running, to kind of get all the operational stuff back in Australia, sort of functioning as autonomously as it could. And he came here and started setting up, accounts and businesses and just setting us up for success over here.
Wow. So what were your family's and friends' reaction to, oh, we're going to move to the United States?
Well, especially because it was such a quick decision. Like 4 months, we decided, and then 4 months later, 4.5 months, I think he was gone. And so I think they, at first, I think they knew by that point that when we say we're going to do something, we tend to do it. But I think they were still a little bit shocked that we did it so quickly, and that the decision was really sort of, we're doing it, we're going. Especially because it was COVID. So my husband actually had to write a letter to the Australian government to get permission to leave the country.
Oh, wow.
Because of our lockdown. So it was a really like, I think that kind of puts it in perspective as well a little bit, and just how like it was a little shocking for our family. They were like, what he's going, next month, like what, so, but they're always
in the
really
middle of the
supportive.
pandemic, you're going to pick up and move,
they're like, we haven't seen you, and now you're moving to the other side of the world. So like, when are we ever going to see you?
Yeah. You're like, well, we still have Zoom, so.
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah. So what did you were hiring all the staff too. So what was their reaction to say, oh, I'm hiring you for a position and I'm leaving?
I mean, I feel like there's always that excitement too, when you have that, it's, that's exciting. That's great. Especially, America, that's kind of, we grow up with so much influence from you guys here over in the States. And so, I think there's always that, oh, wow, that's really cool. Like there's excitement behind that. Definitely.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just a great leap for your business to kind of take the international journey for expansion. So I'm sure there's a lot of excitement around that from your team as well. Okay, so before we kind of continue to your journey to the U.S., there's one detour I want to take, and because you mentioned the influences of the U.S. on Australia, tell us about how you landed on Shark Tank Australia.
Oh yeah. So Shark Tank Australia was fun. It was fun. It was a really great experience. We did that, I think, within the first year of our business being open. Wow. So we did that actually. We filmed that quite early on. We applied and got on, and were really excited and just, keen to share what we were doing with the world, and to, have that exposure was honestly just fantastic, and it's invalid. You can't put a price on that. So that was a really exciting time. It was also, I think it made it even more exciting because it was still so new in our business. So we kind of just started, and within the year, and then we're filming Shark Tank, and it just was all happening. And it was, I think, the right time because we still had energy. No. We had it like we hadn't burnt
the
ourselves out
passion
yet.
was still completely present, and not tempered by day to day.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Yeah. And so did you get an investment out of that?
I mean, on TV, yes, but the realities of it, with, after the follow-ups and everything, it didn't really work out to be the right fit. I think truthfully, we're probably a little too green. And the timing wasn't really right, but, it was a fantastic experience, and, we were able to connect with, the shark that, did make the investment, so to speak. And they were great. And, every now and then as well, we know that we can send an email and they'll reply. So that's something that's a nice relationship to have. And definitely no regrets on that.
Yeah. Did you see from your appearance in there, did that have any impact in your sales?
Well, my husband actually proposed to me on Shark Tank on the episode in Australia, which was a total surprise to me.
Well, it had a very big impact in something, your life.
It did. Well, it's funny because to this day, we still sometimes get people who will message us and be like, congratulations. Like, what? Like they've seen the episode on YouTube or something. Yeah. And they don't really realize when it was filmed and how long ago it was. And so they're like, congratulations. We're like, thank you.
Wow. Well, he saw an amazing moment to take advantage of. So good job on him for doing that.
Yeah, he deserves all the credit for that. It was, It was a total surprise.
I'm
And
sure the
great viewing.
producers loved it too for a TV moment.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think he was their favorite of that season.
Oh yeah, for sure. Very cool. So, okay, so you do all that and you make this decision to come to the US. And how has that experience been now working in a new country where different rules, laws, regulations, market, consumer behavior, all of that?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been really great to kind of understand and learn the nuances. You know, the label compliance are different. You know,
Yeah.
as an example, and it's interesting. It's all these things that we find really interesting and just learning along the way. So, you know, for example, here on the label, you have to put the amount of serves. It's a guideline. It's already structured. So, for example, like a spice mix, a serving size is a quarter teaspoon. But
Hmm.
in Australia, you can dictate how many serves in that product yourself. There's no set measurement, but
Hmm.
here there is. So just little things like that, learning all of those nuances. You know, the FDA is different to the Australian labeling, so that was, you know, obviously, um, you know, an interesting and I think a really great thing to learn because you get to see a different side of it, and not many businesses, not many people get to see that. Obviously,
Yeah,
there
of
are a lot of international brands, but you know, being a smaller
course.
company and doing it ourselves, I think seeing it firsthand, you know, has been a really interesting and great sort of, you know, learning experience, and definitely puts us in a unique position where we sort of have that insight that a lot of people don't and don't
Hmm.
even realize,
Yeah,
frankly, um,
yeah.
which is
So,
interesting. And
would you,
then my biggest thing to learn, you know, is the metric system, the ounces, the mils, the
yes,
pounds.
yeah,
I'm still getting my head around
yes.
that. That's still,
I
I'm
think a
grateful
lot
for
of people are still
technology.
getting their head around that, whether they love the metric system or not. Lots of debate on that, and some things that get measured in that, and yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
especially when you're
Yeah.
in the scientific side of it, yeah, all the whole different ball game. So, with your market though, so you still have a real like your strongest base of customer base is still in Australia, correct? And then you still are you moving into the U.S. market now?
Yeah, so still growing here. We've really, you know, one of the things that we learned is that, you know, we're sort of taking it a little slower here, and we're moving sort of more, you know, with intention, and really,
Hmm.
you know, one of the things that we've been able to, you know, witness and see and heard stories, you know, the American market is so different. And, you know, one of the biggest differences is, you know, in Australia, you know, to be successful, you need to be sort of a national brand. You need to be everywhere. But
Okay.
here in the States, you know, you can be more regional. You can be smaller. You don't need to start being everywhere. And I think that's something
Yeah.
that in our minds coming from Australia, you know, we're so used to just like, well, I need to be everywhere. I need to be national, or I'm not, you know, going to be successful. But it's very different here. And it's actually quite hard to just start being national because it's such a big country and it's so expensive,
Yeah.
to do that, and to, you know, be able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Supply the whole country.
The whole
So
country.
that's something. So yeah, exactly. So we're definitely just, you know, being a lot more, you know, intentional with our plans here. You know, we just have some product on Amazon at the moment. And we're really just sort of, you know, selecting and seeing and watching, you know, what the uptick is. Also the
Hmm.
education, the knowledge is a little, it's not where it is in Australia here as well, especially on the FODMAP diet. So,
Yeah.
you know, that also plays a part into it as well, where we're, you know, educating while selling, which is
Yeah.
something that's interesting as well. And that didn't need to be done as much in Australia because the diet actually came from Australia. So I don't know, if
Yeah.
you
Tell us
know
a
that
little
it's a
bit
rare.
more for those that don't know the FODMAP, what it is
Yeah.
and how it all
Yeah.
works.
So FODMAP, low FODMAP is a diet. It stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polyols, which are a range of carbohydrates that are poorly digested in a actually large subset of the community. Generally, it's been labeled as IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And it wasn't until a university in Australia founded the research and figured out that,
Hmm.
hey, it's actually these particular carbohydrates that are causing these digestive issues. So they're just poorly digested. I think the prevalence is about 1 in 5 adults can benefit from going on
Mm.
a low FODMAP diet. So it's quite a high prevalence. And so
Yeah.
Australia is sort of the leader, and the university is from Melbourne. So we're from Melbourne. So it's like
Yep. So
Australia's the
right
leader
in your
in the world,
backyard.
and Melbourne's
Yeah.
Exactly. Melbourne's leader in
Yeah.
Australia. And so it's been around for, I think, over a decade in Australia. And I think it's just starting to
Okay.
get sort of more knowledge. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of it before. Have you ever heard of the low FODMAP diet, or is this you've heard of it
Yeah, and
before?
I've yes, I've heard of it, but I feel like it's just starting to get out
Yeah,
there in the US market. Like, I can see it in like a couple of like Instagram posts or on threads or something,
yeah,
but you don't see it too much in like the grocery store unless like maybe you're looking for it specifically. So I don't think all the dots are really connected yet in the US market. I don't know. What are your
yeah,
thoughts?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. It's sort of starting. People are like, oh, yeah, I think I've heard of that, or yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
But in Australia, it's very much like, oh, yeah. Sometimes often, you'll go out to eat and they know what it means. So if you say, I don't
Mm,
want onion or garlic there at the restaurant, they're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. We can make it, but here it's like, what? No onion, no garlic. Like, it throws everyone in a tailspin. So there's
right.
definitely, I feel like it's definitely becoming more known, but it's not quite there yet. So, that
Hmm.
also kind of dictates and helps us, with our growth and what we put out there. And also it's a unique position to be sort of, help
Sure.
spread the awareness of this as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great opportunity. And I think, um, eh, when you have the actual physical CPG product, just how much easier it can make cooking and more enjoyable it can make it for people at home. But I'm curious now that you're here in the US and, you ran cafes in Australia that cater to this. How has your experience been going out to eat here?
Uh, it can be challenging, but over the years, I've kind of learned what I can order, what I can't order.
Hmm.
And so that makes it a little bit easier. But, you know, dressing on the side,
Uh-huh.
a salad, those
Yeah.
kinds of options are usually the safest bet. So it is a bit of a
Okay.
challenge, but, you know, um, well, it is what it is. That's what.
Yeah.
One day we'll get there. It'll get better.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, we're headed in a more productive area with it. So, in looking at the US market now, are you in your product development side, are you adapting or introducing some new products for US tastes versus what you have in Australia, or are you going to try to introduce your Australian best sellers to the US?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there are definitely palate differences, I would say.
Hmm.
Someone said to me once, and I think it's very, very true. I think Australians skew towards a more salty palate, and
Okay.
Americans tend to have a more sweet palate. Um, and so I feel like that is just a great insight. And there's definitely, and I think it as well, Americans like spicier foods, like
Hmm.
hot sauce, like you guys love your hot
Yeah.
sauce and your
Yeah.
spices and all of that, which is great insight. But yeah, it's been really interesting. Our spice mixes, we sell spice mixes on Amazon, and we are definitely looking at bringing in some sort of more spice mixes that are more for America, like a
Okay.
everything bagel seasoning or a ranch seasoning, those we don't really have in Australia. So definitely, and for me, from the creative side, I'm very excited to sort of get my
Hmm.
hands dirty and start sort of creating
Yeah.
and trying to figure out how to make those, without onion and garlic, and make them allergy friendly and everything. So
Hmm. Yeah,
it's
I mean,
exciting for
as
me.
you're talking about it, I was like, every salsa product I know has onion and garlic in it. So it's like such a base ingredient of so many of those hot flavors. But everything bagel is I love, that's a great, I tend to like more salty than sweet flavor myself. Um, I hate ranch as a flavor though. It's just, I did not grow up with ranch dressing around. And when I lived in the Southwest, they put ranch dressing on everything. And it was like
Yeah.
sacrilege. Like, there was a pizza place near us that very famous in New Mexico, called Dion's Pizza. Pizza's good. It's not New York pizza, but it's good enough. But everybody would get their side of ranch dressing and pizza, and then they would dip the pizza into the ranch dressing. And I was, what are you doing to this poor pizza? But that's People will
Glad I'm not
swear
the
by
only
it.
one that feels that way, because we don't do dressings with pizza at all. Like, we don't do dips with pizza at all in Australia. And so it's
Yeah.
nice to hear someone else that's American who's also like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because yeah, it's strange for us, but yeah,
Yeah. Yes.
I
I
tried it when in
apologize to
Rome.
all my New
You give it a
Mexico
go.
friends, but do not agree with your ranch dipping pizza practices.
We'll need to have our own pizza date, I think, because we're aligned
Yeah.
there.
Yes. Perfect. So definitely will do that. So what has been some of your best sellers in the US market of your products so far?
We have the taco seasoning, which actually, because it's most of that cuisine, Mexican, all of that has a lot
Sure.
of onion and garlic. We have an onion and garlic free taco seasoning, which is quite popular. We also
Excellent.
recently released an onion and a garlic replacer, which have
Oh,
been very popular as well. So it's a way to get the
yeah.
flavor and get the seasoning in without obviously having to use
Hmm.
onion and garlic. So those have been really
Yeah.
popular. One thing we have noticed is that, broadly speaking, here over in the United States, you guys use a lot of onion and garlic powder just in general. As a
Yeah.
seasoning, in Australia we don't tend to use that. We opt for like the real onion and the real garlic. But we've noticed that you guys like to use the powder because it's easy and convenient. We understand, and so
Hmm.
bringing out that onion and garlic replacer powder has been a really great unlock for us.
Yeah, yeah, that's in so many dishes, whether it's Italian or Greek or Mexican. Yeah, just think of so many cuisines for those. Those are kind of like the pantry staples in every household I think I've been in. Like
Yeah,
the
well, it's
big
like the holy
Costco
trinity. It's
size
like
jar.
exactly. It's like any recipe starts with onion and garlic, right? It's like the base. Like you're reaching for like oil, like olive oil, onion, garlic. Like does it?
Pretty much, yes, the base for honestly most of my cooking as well. So, and so, are you doing your any manufacturing in the U.S. now, or is it all still being done in Australia?
No, we do. We have a co-packer. So we do manufacture here in the States, which is makes it logistically just makes sense.
Yes.
It's where Australia is very far away. Something
Yes.
that we always knew, but now that we've left, we really do realize. People are like, do you
You
guys
feel
visit
it.
much? It's like, no, not really. It's quite far.
Yeah.
It's a good 24 hours of travel, including like layovers and everything. Especially we're based on the East Coast, so it's got that extra. Got to cross the
Hmm.
country first and then head on over. So having manufacturing here just logistically made sense for us. Uh,
Well, I just heard yesterday that supposedly we're getting a direct flight from New York to Australia soon. Uh, 22 hours, I believe
wow.
it's going to be. So I forget what
Yeah.
airline it's going to, maybe, I don't know, whatever your national airline in Australia is, I think. It's doing it.
That's really great. I know that before that it was from the West Coast. I think from San Francisco it was 16 hours. San Francisco or LA
Wow.
direct to Melbourne where we're from, and that was 16
Okay.
hours. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
22 from the East Coast. That's good to know. That's good
Right.
to know. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're getting closer to simplifying travel to Australia.
Yeah. It doesn't really change the length of time, but at least it's less
No,
connections for you. So,
exactly. But
so
then if you're on the plane for 22 hours, is it good to get out, stretch your
uh,
legs? It's got to
yeah, well,
figure out.
that's the
Well,
other side of it.
it's never going to be
You got
perfect.
to pick your battles, I guess,
Exactly. Exactly.
So looking at, this international company that you guys have built and, all the brand equity that you've established in Australia and now are starting to create here in the US, kind of where do you see your growth happening and what's next for the company?
Yeah. As I kind of said, we're sort of almost letting the climate here dictate where we go next. We obviously have
Hmm.
a very large array of products that we can, bring out and draw upon, which is really exciting, I think. And so for us, it's just about, waiting for that opportunity where, we are able to really just start launching the rest of the products. In
Hmm.
terms of, we're really enjoying our Amazon business at the moment, but we would love to obviously be able to get our products into more hands, into more tummies, to make people feel,
Hmm.
better and nicer. And we're actually, kind of, we think that, there's a lot of different avenues we could take. The frozen food space, we have a range of frozen products. That's really
Mm-hmm.
a new sort of upcoming, that it's ripe for disruption. And then we're starting to see some frozen, companies start, modernizing and,
Mm-hmm.
changing the landscape of the frozen component a lot. So,
Yes, that's quite
that's
a
something
hot
that we're
area
kind of,
right now.
it's a hot area right
No,
now, but it's an expensive
that's a
area.
bad
It's a
pun.
cold area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So apologies to everyone for that one. Wasn't
Yeah.
intended, but yeah, very
Yeah.
popular area at the moment.
Yes. Yes. But it's, it's an expensive area and the shelf space is
Yes.
limited and there's all these things
Hmm.
to consider. So, if anybody, wants to invest in some frozen companies, we're here, we're
Yes.
ready.
Contact
We've got the
Christina.
product, we've got the recipe.
Yes.
There's my shoot my shot.
Yeah, you should.
No,
Now is the time to do it.
now is the time. We've got the product. We're ready. It's selling in
Yeah.
Australia. We know it's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting. It's very exciting because of,
Hmm.
the size of the market here. It's
Yeah.
so different. I mean, Australia has I think it's not even 30 million population, across the whole
Mm.
country. That's sort of, I think our whole population fits into the same population of Texas,
Yeah.
or something like that. Like Texas has the amount of the whole country. So,
Yeah.
that kind of puts it in perspective a little bit. So it's
Right.
exciting.
Yep.
It's exciting being here. We're
Much
grateful to
bigger,
be here.
yeah, landscape to work with here. So when you're looking at your Amazon business here in the US, how are you helping support the sales? Are you doing Amazon ads? Are you doing social media? Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah. So we do ads on Amazon. We also do social media. I do personally a lot of cooking videos with our products to really show people how to use it,
Hmm.
give them some inspiration, share, all the different ways that you can use it, and try to create some different sort of, recipes that are maybe a little bit unique and maybe hadn't thought
Hmm.
of using it in that way before. For example, I just made some samosas, just as a quick little, something that's not doesn't really come to mind as something that you would
Hmm.
normally think to make, but you know,
Yeah,
let the
look
creativity
delicious. Yeah.
spark. Bring back the
Yeah.
joy to cooking. That's what we like to do.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Good. So yeah, so you're using that education really in your content. Let people know what the FODMAP diet is and that you guys are around.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to that end as well, we've also kind of started to, we have released an app just in sort of beta phase as well, which is sort of a gut companion app. So where you can go in and you can log in the food that you're eating, and it'll help track your symptoms, but also, there's a gut brain link, it's a very strong connection. So
Hmm.
you can log in your mood and your sleep and how you're
Yeah.
feeling and it takes, the data and looks at sort of, what you're eating, how you're feeling, and, if there's a correlation there and maybe what triggers, to look out for, to watch, what could be,
Right.
giving you those. Because one of the things with, health in general, but also the dietary side is that it's quite difficult and hard to pinpoint, what is actually causing the problem. Why am I feeling this way? And so, this sort of uses technology to help, extrapolate and help you, remember and figure out what's happening. So that's something that we're working on as well, just as part of the education and sort of
Yeah.
helping the community in general.
Yeah. I mean, that's great to have that sort of unbiased data points to look at, because sometimes you're like, oh, what did I have? Oh,
Yeah,
I had some caffeine and that gave me headache. Or, was that today or was that yesterday? I don't remember. It's like,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And much easier than
Excellent. So
having to write it down.
yeah, 100%. One
Convenience.
day write it in the notes on your phone. The next day write it in a notebook. It's yeah, excellent in an app. So the app is in beta now, and then we'll be rolling out
Yeah, so
further.
you can download it. It's Chrissy.app, KRISSI. I did not name it. My husband named it in honor of me, for different spelling. So appreciate it.
Very nice.
But that's the app. So if anybody wants to go check it out, it's just a web app at the moment, but we're in any suggestions, anything that's not working, let us know. We want to get it to a point where, anyone can use it, just for health and wellness in general.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we will include the link to the app as well as your website in the show notes and blog posts that go along with the episode. So check down below, everybody, and go download it and give them some feedback and try it out.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. All right, Christina, before we wrap up today, got to ask you our signature question. So looking at everything that you guys have done over the last 11 years, this Pacific or Atlantic journey, depending what direction you flew over. What has been your recipe to revenue?
I think number one is sort of for us being the customer. That has been sort of the main thing I think that's contributed to our success, because we, it started based out of our own necessity. That's why we started the business. And so when we get excited about a product, we know that our customers will get excited about it. And I think the second thing is to just be able to just persevere and just, keep getting and keep getting up and try again. That old saying, but it rings true. There's a lot of things that happen. We've had a lot of forward step, for every step forward, we've had 2 steps back, but it's just about, when you're really passionate, I think having passion is another component that's really contributed to our success, because it's allowed us to continue and to not be, completely throw in the towel when things just have gotten to that point where, you wonder if it's even worth continuing.
Well, excellent. Like Chumpawampa says, I get knocked out and I just get back up again.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Recipe to Revenue. It's been so great to hear your journey, and so excited to see you expand in the U.S. market and see what other products you launch here and where that journey takes you into the future. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Recipe to Revenue. If you're building in the food, beverage, or hospitality space, you're in the right room. Subscribe for more founder stories and real-world growth strategies. And if this episode helped, share it with a friend and leave a review. It's how this show grows. For tools, templates, and ways to work together, visit recipetorevenue.co. I'm Leah Messina. Until next time, keep cooking up the next revenue stream.